Are you machining small stock on your router table just like this? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to show you how to make a feather board. Here we go. Now, if you've already got a router table, you may very well have a feather board. But if you haven't, it's basically a board you attach to your router table or the router table fence, and it helps keep your piece of timber or your stock that you're running through either flat on the table bed or pushed against the fence. Either way, we're going to make one right now. I'm going to be making my feather board out of 12mm hardwood ply. You could make it out of MDF, but it's probably not the best material to make it out of. But if you really wanted to go to town, you could make it out of some hardwood. So my thought was hardwood ply is going to be a slightly easier and cheaper option. As you can see, here's my bit of ply that I've just cut, and I've actually cut it to exactly the same length as my fence. There's no big reason for that. I just thought it would look nice if it was the same size. The idea of the feather board is that you can move it backwards and forwards into the correct position once you've got your fence in the right position, and this will obviously squash to a degree your bit of timber that you're running through here. You could also attach it with clamps or some other way if you wanted to the fence, and that will help keep the board down on the router table bed. But of course you could build two, make two of these and have one pushing down and one pushing in. Basically what we need to do is to cut some slots in this board, something like this, which allows them to bend and move slightly as we pass a bit of timber through the router. I don't want to have these all the way along the board, there's no need for that, but I would say certainly around this area where the perspex insert is. So what I'm going to do is to offer that up to there and just put a little mark where the perspex insert is, just like that, so I know exactly how long and how many of these little fingers I want pushing against the router table. So here's my board that I've marked out, and you can see this line here and this line here line up roughly with the perspex there. That's where I want all my fingers. I'm going to call them fingers. And then this line here represents how deep I'm going to be cutting. So I want all these in line. Obviously I don't want them all at different depths. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll be doing it on the miter saw. Now there's two reasons why I've put this piece of board here and I've clamped it into position. Firstly is so that I can plunge the saw down and then I can cut into this. Otherwise, if I'm plunging down straight into this, it will start to burn. So that's the first reason. The second reason, and as you can see, I've made a 45-degree cut on here. So that means when I mark my board where I want my cuts to be, I can just line that up directly with that point, and it saves me mucking about and moving the board around too much trying to get it in line with the saw blade. So we'll make the first cut directly in line with that point there. As you can see, what I've also done is just put a clamp in place here, just because there's not a lot of saw bed for this to sit on, so that should hold that nice and still. After a very shaky experience, you'll see that I have made this first cut here, and the distance between this point and how big I want my finger to be here is 15mm. This gives me about 12mm and then 3mm here for the cut. So I've basically marked this every 15mm, so that'll give me the gap 12, gap 12, gap 12, and so on. And I shall do that all the way along, just beyond the point that I marked, because it stops a little bit short, so I'll just go one extra. What I've also done on the miter saw, it's very technical here, and I've put a clamp on the sliding rail. So when I move this forward as I'm making the cut, it's going to stop there, and I know that's how deep I want the cut to be. Save me getting my head in the way and trying to find that line that I'm cutting to. So I've completed all the cuts now, and if I put that roughly in position, you can see that these cover this whole perspex acrylic area, which is exactly what I wanted. You can notice here, if I push these, there's a little bit of spring in them, which is perfect. They're nice and strong, but they've also got that flexibility, which is what we need, of course. Now what I need to do next is to get rid of a bit of this, because it's all right having the flexibility here, but it does mean that it will come across and then it will just hit this bit. So I just need to take a little bit off this bit here and this bit here, and that will allow these just to flex a little bit more. So as you can see here, I'm going to cut 12 millimeters of this section here. I've just given this a clean up, but as you can see with this bit cut away here, it means that obviously the board or whatever it is you're machining can pass through, and it's not going to get obstructed by this bit, but it does give it that little spring on here as it passes through. Annoyingly, I just nipped the end of that with the saw, but I'm not too worried because it's right on the end. Very annoying though, that's upset me. Now when I made this router table, and if you like it, there's a link there right now, you can go and check out how I made it. I did buy these T-rails, which obviously slot or sit in the table itself. And it came with these T-bolts, which I use for the fence. But it also came with these, I'm not quite sure what to call these. They're like a nut block, if you like. They're basically square with a little lip on the sides. So it actually slides into the T-track on the router table. And I'm going to use those to secure my featherboard down. So all I need to do now is just to line the featherboard up with my fence like so, and I've got the nuts in here, the nut blocks, whatever you want to call them, and I'm just going to mark exactly where those holes are. So I just mark the middle on that edge of the board, and then what I can do is just mark that on there and also on there. I wanted to put those holes in the center, but if I put that one in the center, it's going to be a bit close to this. So I'm going to bring that down. I think I'm going to bring that down to 40, and then we'll bring that one down to 40 as well. Doesn't matter too much, but that will be better. I'll just put a circle around that one in case I put it back in the old hole. Here are the bolts that I've got to put through these. I did cut these down. They were just a little bit too long and they were hitting the bottom of the T-track before they tightened up. So I've just taken a little bit off. I've got a washer to put on them, and then I can fix those. But what I need to do is see what size hole to go with. These are an M8. So I'm thinking 9. Have I got a 9mm drill? I've got plenty in here, but have I got a 9mm? Oh, look at that. The first one I go for is a 9mm. So perfect. There we go. 9mm drill, which will just give me a little bit of wiggle room with that M8 bolt. But what I really like to do, if I'm drilling a large hole, such as this 9mm diameter, I know it's not massive, but I just like to start it off with a smaller drill. Or even if I'm using a small drill, I like to punch it first, just so I've got it exactly where I want it. Yeah, I've got a 9mm drill. It's not brilliantly sharp though, but it'll do. There we go, nice. I'll just put those over the top of those nuts. And what I might do is get myself something like a bolt with a handle or something, but I'm not really going to be moving this around a lot, and I'm not going to be using it a lot, so I'm quite happy just to use it like this, and then, you know, be able to tighten it with a screwdriver, which I think is okay. But there we go. So I can adjust my fence to whatever position, and then I can adjust my feather board. Just do that up like so, and I'm good to go. Let's check it out. Well, I've got a 20mm straight bit that I've set up in the router. I'm going to put a little rebate on one edge of this piece of softwood. So I'll just move the fence forward, just get that set. So it just takes a wee bit off. So we'll tighten off the fence, and then what I need to do is to just gently push the feather board against this side, and then we'll do the same on that side, just applying a little bit of pressure, not too much, and we can do that up. You can attach it to the fence on the router table to keep your work pressed down. Using a feather board on a table router is a really good idea to ensure that your workpiece is against the fence and against the table, which will give you accurate results, because if you're just holding it, it might tend to do this and lift up and move. The other thing is it acts as more fingers holding your workpiece against the fence, so it means you don't really have to have your hands right here pushing against it, so it keeps things a lot safer. Of course, you can just go and buy one. You don't have to make your own. Of course, you don't have to make your own. We've got the internet, and you can buy absolutely anything on the internet, including feather boards for router tables. Well, hopefully you found this video interesting, and if you've got any questions or comments, leave those in the comments box below. Your support is massively appreciated, so thank you very much. And until next time, happy woodworking.